Global warming is happening quicker than anybody could have predicted, as ice caps melt and flames burn. Climate change has distinct consequences in different parts of the world. Some areas will warm faster than others, some will receive more rainfall, while others will have more regular droughts. With less snowfall in the Alps and weak harvests in Northern California's wineries, rising temperatures are eroding resources that tourist sectors rely on. Some natural beauties, such as the Great Barrier Reef, are on the verge of extinction. Regional variations in temperature and precipitation are impacting people and ecosystems. Extinction threatens animals that are unable to adapt to climate change and can't migrate to other locations. Now we will look at the top most famous destinations that have been and will be impacted by the consequences of climate change. The Amazon, the world's biggest forest, encompasses around 40% of the South American continent and comprises portions of 8 South American countries. The Amazon is home to more plant and animal species than any other place on Earth, possibly accounting for 30% of the world's biodiversity. The Amazon has a long history of human habitation, but the speed of change has accelerated in recent decades due to increased human population, the advent of mechanized agriculture, and the region's integration into the global economy. This transition has had a significant influence on the Amazon. This transformation from a rural backwater to a component in the global economy has resulted in widespread deforestation and forest degradation in the Amazon. Since the 1970s, more than 1.4 million hectares of forests have been removed. The Amazon is changing for reasons other than deforestation. The Amazon rainforest is suffering greatly as a result of global climate change. Higher temperatures in the tropical Atlantic reduces rainfall across huge swaths of the Amazon, exacerbating dryness and increasing the rainforest's susceptibility to fire. If present rates of warming continue, computer models predict that much of the Amazon would shift from rainforest to savanna, particularly in the region's south. Such a change might have major economic and ecological consequences, such as disrupting rainfall, which now feeds regions that create 70% of South America's GDP. What happens if Amazon rainforest disappears? The pharmaceutical business would suffer enormous losses. 90% of ailments are treated with medications offered by Amazonian nature. The Amazon rainforest is vital to the medical world. The medical industry suffers as the forest deteriorates. It is the source of around 121 medicinal products, including those for leukemia and glaucoma. Furthermore, the medications used to treat cardiac disease are mostly derived from the forest. Only 1% of the 80,000 plant species tested positive for therapeutic properties. The Amazon rainforest is home to half of the world's species. The habitat of such creatures is being destroyed as rainforests are being depleted. Amazon is home to 10% of the world's biodiversity, including 40,000 plant species, 370 reptiles, 2.5 million insects, and 3,000 freshwater fish. Every day, an estimated 137 plant, animal, and insect species are lost throughout the planet. If current trends continue, the world will lose half of its species, including all the endangered ones. According to the present scenario, the destruction would result in significant carbon emissions, affecting air quality and temperature and contributing to the global warming process. The destruction and loss of the Amazon rainforest will result in higher temperatures, more frequent floods, and longer droughts. The gradual decrease in rainfall will increase pests and illnesses, and the amount of water available for sowing and harvesting crops would be diminished. The Amazon jungle provides refuge to 350 ethnic groups. The Amazon rivers provide enormous benefits to people all across the world. The Atlantic Ocean obtains around 175,000 cubic meters of freshwater. So far, Amazon Conservation has planted approximately 250,000 trees in damaged areas. Protecting and preserving the Amazon, a region twice the size of the United States, is an immense challenge. Since the 1970s, the World Wildlife Fund has been at the very forefront of efforts to conserve the people, trees, and wildlife that call the Amazon home. The enormous Alaskan wilderness, which is more than twice the size of Texas, has a lot to offer the adventurous outdoor traveler. Alaska is home to 16 national nature reserves spread across 76 million acres, accounting for 60% of the entire area maintained by the National Park Service. Due to its closeness to the rapidly heating Arctic, Alaska is experiencing significant impacts in the form of coastline erosion, sea ice loss, and permafrost melt. The average temperature in Alaska has risen by around 3 degrees Fahrenheit during the last 60 years. The rise in temperatures is more than double the amount of heat recorded in the rest of the country. Winter warming has increased by an average of 6 degrees Fahrenheit, causing environmental changes such as the early breaking of river ice in the spring. As the environment continues to warm, average annual temperatures in Alaska are expected to rise by 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit by the middle of the century. Precipitation in Alaska is expected to rise throughout the year by the end of the century. Despite more precipitation, the state is expected to become drier as a result of increased evaporation driven by warmer temperatures and longer growing seasons. In 2016 and 2019 were the 2 warmest years on record. From 1950 to 2017, Greenhouse gas emissions were responsible for 75% of Alaska's yearly average warming. Temperature, precipitation, and ice changes have a wide range of consequences. Including harsh droughts, diminished snowpack, sea level changes, ocean warming and acidification, huge wildfires, and more intense heat waves. Wildfires, which have burned more of Alaska's forests in the last decade than any other, are another terrible result of rising temperatures. By 2050, the number of wildfires is anticipated to increase. Climate change is altering lakes, ponds, wetlands, and plant composition, all of which have an influence on human health, animals, and ecosystems. Lakes are shrinking in size, with most lakes in the state's south region is decreasing in size. Millions of ducks and shorebirds spend the winter in the lower region, while surface lakes and wetlands offer nesting habitats. Alaska natives hunting and fishing for food rely on these wetland habitats and animal resources. Arctic plants and animals, especially those gathered for subsistence, are also more susceptible to illness as the temperature warms. In the battle against global climate change, Alaska offers unique strengths and possibilities. Alaska offers an abundance of renewable energy resources that are becoming more economically and technically possible to utilize. The land and marine resources of Alaska are ideally adapted to support natural climate solutions. Alaska's forests and boreal peatlands contain massive amounts of carbon and greenhouse gases. For thousands of years, Alaska's indigenous people have used natural climatic options for resolution, using traditional knowledge and local scientific observations to boost Alaska's climate response and develop community resilience in the face of change can help strengthen the state's response to climate change. The Dead Sea region, which is bordered by Israel, Jordan, and the West Bank, is famous across the world for its distinctive topographical and ecological qualities. Though there is no wildlife in the Dead Sea itself, the surrounding area is home to endangered animals like hyrax, ibex, and leopard. The indigenous Dead Sea sparrow thrives in the marshes surrounding the sea. Every year, millions of migrating birds use the region as a resting and nesting ground as they travel between Europe and Africa. The Dead Sea is evaporating at a rate of 3.3 feet per year. It has already shrunk by 1/3 of its original size. Human activity is to blame for the decline of one of the saltest pools of water on the Earth, which is located 1,388 feet below sea level. Over the years, dams, storage reservoirs, and pipelines have lowered incoming water levels to less than 5% of their initial capacity. Furthermore, because the Dead Sea minerals have been hailed as medicinal, extraction by cosmetic industries has been found harmful. Add to that the fact that the Middle East's increasingly hot environment makes replenishment difficult. Experts predict that if the Dead Sea continues to decrease at its current rate, it will be totally dry by 2050. As the lake dries up, salt deposits dissolve below, forming sinkholes and enormous craters in the soil. A famous beach was already blocked due to a sinkhole that engulfed the parking lot. The beach is still scattered with beach chairs, a little barbecue grill, and an abandoned bar. So, how can we save the Dead Sea from shrinking? The construction of a canal to replace the Dead Sea with desalinated water from the Red Sea is one suggested option. Another idea is to increase the flow of the Jordan River to assist restore the Dead Sea. A third proposal requires mining corporations to pay for the repair of the lake. The Dead Sea is geologically significant in the region, and it has several notable components. It is the world's saltest and most mineral-rich body of water. It is also biologically significant since it is home to several unique biological microorganisms that are not found anywhere else on Earth. The tallest and most widespread mountain range in Europe, covering nearly 1,200 kilometers across 7 alpine nations, is under a significant threat from glacial shrinkage as a result of climate change. Global warming has led all alpine glaciers to retreat during the previous century. As glaciers melt, alpine plants migrate uphill at a rate of 0.5 to 4 meters each decade. Over the long run, lowland plants will drive alpine species higher and higher until they run out of options, forcing them to extinction. Another possible hazard posed by climate change is the spread of exotic species from parks and gardens, which can already be seen in the southern Alps where evergreen trees are infiltrating native woods. The species composed of plant communities may alter, with unanticipated effects for the entire food chain. The invasion of southern pathogens, which bring illnesses against which the Alps plants and animals have no protection, might also be a result of global warming. Climate change will also cause changes in rain and snowfall patterns, as well as an increase in the frequency of extreme weather events such as floods and avalanches. Higher temperatures will cause permafrost layers to disintegrate, resulting in slope instability, rock falls, and landslides. Pollution and habitat loss, as well as mass tourism and the effects of climate change, are all important threats to the Alps. Human influences, such as rapid urbanization and increased agriculture, have already harmed the distinctive biodiversity that characterizes most alpine valleys. Even the most isolated natural regions of the Alps are now under threat as mass tourism becomes more widespread. To conserve the Alpine Convention came into effect in 1991. It was signed by Austria, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and the European Union, with Slovenia joining later in 1993. The Alpine Convention was the first legally binding international pact established to safeguard a mountain region. The Alpine Convention's goal is to safeguard the natural environment of the Alps and to guarantee that any development is done in a sustainable manner. It seeks to balance the requirements of local inhabitants and animals while also proposing climate change reduction measures. The Alpine Convention includes many essential protocols that member nations must follow in order to attain these aims. The Alps are one of Europe's most biodiverse areas. The mountain range comprises some of Central Europe's last wilderness areas and is home to some of the world's most diverse species. Given this, it is not unexpected that the Alps have been classified as a zone of global significance for biodiversity conservation. Rio de Janeiro is a massive beachfront city in Brazil known for its Copacabana and Ipanema beaches, the 38-meter-tall Christ the Redeemer statue atop Mount Corcovado, and Sugarloaf Mountain, a granite peak with cable cars to the top. The city is also well known for its vast favelas. Its active carnival event, which features parade floats, flashy costumes, and samba dancers, is the biggest in the world. Climate scientists anticipate that Rio de Janeiro would be the most affected South American city by climate change. According to projections, if temperatures keep on rising, the sea level around Rio would rise to 32 inches by 2100, covering the city's iconic beaches, airport, and possibly some interior neighborhoods. Rio began to spread uncontrollably after giving up the status of national capital to Brasilia in 1960. The metro area's population tripled in 5 decades since then. Population increase worsened the dearth of affordable housing and led to the westward and northward spread of unplanned and composed neighborhoods. By 2050, global average temperatures are expected to rise by 2 degrees Celsius. Warming in Rio de Janeiro is predicted to result in longer, more intense, more frequent, and fatal heat waves that will disproportionately affect the elderly and disadvantaged populations. Rio confronts climate change challenges as rainfall patterns change, affecting water and energy availability. With hydropower generation accounting for more than 70% of current electrical demand, Rio is ensuring a sustainable future for its inhabitants by planning for water and energy conservation measures as part of the Neutral Carbon Rio strategy. Rio de Janeiro has unveiled its 50-year Neutral Carbon Rio strategy to reach carbon neutrality by 2065. Making it one of the first cities in the Global South to commit to long-term carbon neutrality as a municipal policy, placing the city on a low-carbon, resilient, an inclusive route to growth. Glacier National Park, located on the United States-Canada border in Montana, attracts millions of tourists each year. As global temperatures rise, one of the most appealing aspects of this unspoiled habitat, which is home to hundreds of animal species and thousands of plants, is fading. Glacier National Park is a sanctuary for a wide range of plant and animal species, including some of the last remaining populations of threatened and endangered species like grizzly bears and bull trout, as well as non-threatened keystone species like bighorn sheep and black bear. The Glacier National Park mountain habitats that sustain these species are dynamic and impacted by landscape-scale phenomena like forest fire and climate change. According to statistics, warming temperatures have significantly diminished the extent of 39 identified glaciers in Montana since 1966. Some glaciers have lost up to 85% of their area in the last 50 years, and Glacier National Park, home to 37 of the assessed glaciers, is expected to lose all of its ice formations over the next few decades. Only 26 of the park's 150 glaciers from the late 1800s remain today. Furthermore, the shrinkage shows no indications of slowing. As the glaciers melt, entire ecosystems will be transformed, and experts anticipate that there will be little ice left in a few decades and none by the end of the century. The park offers cool fresh water to residents of the state and other places, as well as the crops they grow. But as global temperatures rise and circumstances become hotter and drier more frequently, so will the need for water. That need cannot be satisfied with fewer glaciers. The park admits that it may be too late to rescue Glacier National Park's glaciers because world temperatures have already risen 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. According to the National Park Service, the park's location in northwest Montana is warming at double the rate. To counteract global warming and contribute towards the preservation of surviving glaciers in other areas of the world, the park uses hydro and solar electricity, has recycling programs, and encourages tourists and staff to explore the landscape on foot or by bike rather than by cars. The Maldives is on the bucket list of every beach lovers, with its sweeping lengths of turquoise water, lovely white sands, bright blue sky, and towering palms. The name of the nation conjures up visions of luxurious bungalows overlooking an azure blue ocean. However, climate change has the potential to wipe the country off the map entirely. The archipelago, which consists of about 1,100 coral islands in the midst of the Indian Ocean, is the world's lowest-lying country, and in the last few decades, 1/3 of the nation has sunk below sea level. As a result, global climate change-induced sea level rise poses an existential danger to the island country. According to various NASA and U.S. Geological Survey estimates, with the present rate of global warming, about 80% of the Maldives might become uninhabitable by 2050. If the effects are not reversed, the Maldives might stop existing by the end of the century. The Maldives features over 2,500 coral reefs, making them the archipelago's dominating environment. As ocean temperatures increase, symbiotic algae in corals become white, a process known as bleaching. This can have severe consequences for the overall health of the reef. Already, more than 60% of the coral in the Maldives has bleached. The ocean is this island nation's lifeline, yet increasing sea levels due to climate change is one of its major concerns. Unexpectedly, the Maldives contributes only less amount to global greenhouse gas emissions. According to locals, increasing sea levels have already caused terrible harm to certain islands. Among other issues, seawater is filling up wells and storms are worsening, which is a concern for them. Now, the country is striving to restore its core economy while also encouraging a more sustainable approach to travel and tourism. It isn't only the Maldives. Since 2009, island countries throughout the world have been requesting funding from wealthier countries. Countries with the largest greenhouse gas emissions are mostly to blame for the fast rise in sea levels. Madagascar is a densely populated island that spans roughly 229,000 kilometers and is located close off the coast of Southeast Africa. Indeed, lemurs, the fossa, and the world's tiniest known chameleon are all indigenous to Madagascar. Southern Madagascar faced a lengthy drought between 2018 and 2022 as rainfall became limited due to climate change. Food security was ruined, and widespread hunger reached near-famine proportions. Aside from these worries, expected climate change consequences endanger both the country's wildlife and its inhabitants. Because of its geographical location, Madagascar is routinely impacted by intense cyclones that destroy ecosystems and infrastructure, particularly along the coast. And climate change is expected to increase both the number and intensity of these events. Furthermore, rainfall patterns in specific regions of the country will accelerate, increasing floods and erosion, while rainfall in the south will decrease and become more erratic. The protracted drought in the south has already caused significant hardship for residents, and the long-term impact on the region's biological resources has yet to be determined. Rising sea temperatures and ocean acidity levels are being caused by rising carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, threatening coral reefs and other marine habitats of considerable economic and ecological worth. Finally, sea level rise surrounding Madagascar, which has the longest coastline of any African country, could expose towns and habitats to significant damage from cyclonic and flooding storms, potentially forcing many people to relocate permanently. Since it separated from the African continent an estimated 160 million years ago, Madagascar has evolved its own distinct ecosystems and amazing biodiversity. Approximately 95% of Madagascar's reptiles, 89% of its plant life, and 92% of its animals are found nowhere else on the planet. Madagascar has created and implemented policies and laws to address climate change, including adaptation and mitigation via reduced deforestation, throughout the last decade. The Great Barrier Reef off Australia's northeast coast is the world's biggest coral reef system, stretching over 1,400 miles. It attracts millions of snorkelers and scuba divers each year due to its abundance of marine life. Rising ocean temperatures, on the other hand, have triggered coral bleaching, a condition in which the coral becomes white and is vulnerable to large die-offs, eliminating a key habitat for marine species. Coral is made up of small organisms called polyps that are nourished by microscopic algae that reside inside reefs and are sensitive to temperature fluctuations. The algae color the reefs and create sugars through photosynthesis, which give the coral with the majority of its nutrition. Rising ocean temperatures convert the compounds produced by algae into toxic substances. The coral becomes white as it throws out the deadly algae. Heat stress that lasts more than a few weeks might cause the coral to starve to death. According to Australian government scientists, more than 90% of Great Barrier Reef coral assessed this year was bleached, marking the fourth such serious occurrence in 7 years in the world's biggest coral reef ecosystem. These environments are vital for endangered dugongs, turtles, and small fish. While climate change remains the greatest danger to our Great Barrier Reef, cleaning up the water that flows from the land relieves further strain and aids in the restoration of our Great Barrier Reef's health. Excess fertilizers, fine particles, and pesticides from agriculture runoff and other industries provide the biggest danger to reef water quality. If coral reefs vanished, fish and other marine animals would lose vital food, shelter, and breeding places, and biodiversity would suffer significantly as a result. Marine food webs would be disrupted, and many commercially important species would become extinct. Because of its outstanding universal value, the Great Barrier Reef was designated a World Heritage Site in 1981. This identified the reef as one of the most amazing sights on the planet, as well as its worldwide significance and ecological value. The impacts of the global warming crisis are being felt all around the world, including California. The water year in California from October 2020 to September 2021 was the driest for nearly a century. Napa Valley, a wine-producing region north of the San Francisco Bay Area, witnessed a significant impact from rising temperatures of roughly 115 degrees Fahrenheit, resulting in more frequent and destructive wildfires in the West than ever before. The increased frequency of sweltering summer days is expected to make the area unfriendly to the premium wine grapes that grow there, destroying local vineyards companies and smashing the region's rich tourism sector. Warming temperatures lead heat-sensitive grapes to thin and overripen, resulting in a wine that tastes flabby and lacks depth and flavor. In response to these issues, many Napa Valley winegrowers are gradually beginning to make adjustments and experiment in the vineyard. They have already begun replanting plants lower to the ground on weather-resistant native rootstock, as well as changing the row orientation of the vines to provide protection for grapes from the intense midday heat. Long-established vines in Napa and other wine areas across the world, according to research, will need to shift or adapt to the changing environment in order to thrive. The study suggests that if the globe heats by 2 degrees Celsius, which is plausible, 56% of the world's wine grapes will be wiped off. Losses may be unavoidable in places that are already hot, such as Italy, Spain, and Australia. Attempts to preserve wine grape yield and quality in the face of warming may be connected with increased water usage for irrigation and cooling grapes by misting or sprinkling, potentially impacting freshwater conservation. Agricultural adaptation and conservation initiatives that anticipate these various probable indirect consequences are required. Climate change is the most serious issue confronting humanity today. Global warming is becoming worse by the day. If we don't stop it as quickly as possible, our world will suffer the consequences. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, which have recently progressed, are our most powerful weapons in the battle against climate change. Recent research has been conducted to address climate change with these subjects. Governments, nonprofit groups, and businesses must also execute and contribute to this research. Climate change is posing an increasing danger to long-term development. The projected impacts of climate change might gravely damage agriculture's ability to feed the world, as well as progress towards eradicating hunger, malnutrition, and poverty.